My name is Dominique Avery, and I'm delighted to welcome you to Can We Talk, a show which gives me an opportunity to have a wide-ranging conversation with usually just one interesting Simsbury resident. But as you will see today, I have the pleasure of having two guests, Rebecca Taber-Conover and Josh Picoult. Yes, they are both Simsbury residents, but Rebecca is here in her capacity as the state coordinator of the Connecticut History Day Contest, as well as the head of programs at Connecticut's Old State House. Joining Rebecca is Josh Picoult, who is an incoming senior at Simsbury High School. As you'll learn, he's a very accomplished young man who is the student representative to the Board of Education and the president of the debating club. Thank you both for coming.
Thank you for having us.
The reason they're both here today has little to do with Simsbury. They're here to talk about Connecticut History Day, where Josh took home a first place award and later in Washington won the National History Day U.S. Constitution Award. So Rebecca, I'm going to start with you. I have volunteered as a judge at Connecticut History Day, and I know what it is, but I suspect that there are many people in our audience who have no idea. So maybe you could, I know you could talk about it for the entire half hour, yes. But maybe you could give us the elevator speech.
Absolutely. Connecticut History Day is one of 57 affiliate programs of National History Day. And the program was formed back in the late 1970s with the express purpose of helping history be taught in a better way, and a concern that history wasn't being taught. And so the program, a lot of people refer to it as a contest, but we really think of it as an academic program, and it is for middle and high schoolers. And each year, the National History Day has a theme, which this coming year will be Breaking Barriers in History. Students get to choose how to do what kind of project they would like to do. They choose the topic they're going to explore, and they get to choose whether or not they work alone or in groups. And with History Day, students can present their projects in one of 5 ways. They can do a paper, and that's a category where they have to do it alone, no group papers there. Exhibits, websites, documentaries, and performances. And in those categories, students can do them either alone or in groups. And so with History Day in Connecticut, students start off in participating at the school level, doing a project, usually with teacher supervision, and then they can participate in one of 6 regional contests. The students who win at that level go to the state contest, which is where Josh won first place last year, and students who finish first or second at the state contest are invited to the national contest to be part of 3,000 other students who are participating in the national contest.
So now you said that they work with teachers, but how do they get the students involved? How do the teachers know that this is happening?
Yeah, so teachers find out in a variety of ways, Dominique. Every year we do an educators workshop for teachers who are doing History Day. Last year we had the director of programs from National History Day join us to lead a session. But I do a lot of work in going and doing outreach. We do workshops, free workshops in both schools, in schools, but then also at the Old State House. And we do them for teachers and students. And we go to conferences like the Connecticut Council for the Social Studies and really do outreach and spreading the word. We also have a web presence, both on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, as well as a traditional website.
So Josh, I judged a couple of times in Torrington, which I think is the region that you were in, right?
Yes.
And I noticed the 2 times I was there, there was not one student from Simsbury there. So I'm interested, how did you get involved?
That's right. So I asked myself the same question the first year I went, which was my sophomore year of high school. So that would have been the 2018 competition. And I noticed that there are no other Simsbury kids that have done or are doing History Day with me. And it was interesting because it was right there in our school activities catalog under the section for humanities, people who like history, people who like English. What would be some extracurriculars that you may like to get involved in? And my mentor for both years that I've been doing History Day is my freshman World Civilizations teacher, and she actually did History Day as a Simsbury High School student in 2005. And it was really neat because we were able to work together. And I think part of the reason we're not getting a lot of students involved is just Simsbury hasn't had a presence for quite a while at Connecticut History Day. And I'd definitely like to get more people involved. But for now, I'm the lone rider.
So I've also read, I Googled you, that you have a passion for both history and civic engagement, and I personally share your passion for both things, but I didn't when I was your age, and I'm really curious as to how this developed. Was it from your parents, or how did you get so interested in history and civic engagement?
Sure. So I actually found my love for history in our family's little coin bin that we'd put spare coins that we find in our kitchen. And I was going through it, and I found a little Lincoln penny that looked a lot different than all the other pennies. And I looked it up, and I learned, wow, this is actually, this is a rare coin. This isn't normal American coinage. And from there, I got really interested in coins. To this day, I collect coins, and I just loved researching old things. I loved being able to look into the past and physically hold something that people 100 years ago were looking at in their same hands. I found my love for politics and government stemming off from that love for history. Probably when I hit high school and the 2016 election cycle came around, and I noticed that myself, as well as a lot of my peers, got really involved, both in school and out of school. And we just started hearing more stuff on the news, and I developed, a certain proclivity toward learning and understanding these things. And I had the historical context to view it in because I, had been been involved in some historical topics prior, just because of my own basic interest.
So are your parents interested in that as well?
I wouldn't say so. Both of my parents are entrepreneurs, and they both work in the business world. They support me in my love for history and politics, but it was really my peers that got me involved. A lot of younger kids today.
Interesting. The coin collection thing reminds me, I have a whole mason jar full of European coins before the euro, and also from the German Democratic Republic. If you'd like a few, I'd be happy to. I don't know what to do with them. Josh, the project that you did won you at the Nationals the U.S. Constitution Special Prize for an individual website. So I'd like you to describe what your topic was called, it's a mouthful, and what your website looked like.
Yes, so my topic was about I don't know if I can recite the title verbatim, but it's about the pervasive nature of American democracy, and basically how democracy prevails today, and in that how we can see it being broken down through gerrymandering, which is the pervasive district manipulation that we see in so many states. And what got me particularly interested in that topic was the fact that it's a topic that's happening today that was happening when our country was founded. I cover how the theme for 2019 was triumph and tragedy. And I was talking about how the founders' birth of a new government and a new constitution was a triumph by any measure, but we were breaking down those ideals throughout history all along. And I picked the website category. People who want to do History Day don't have to worry because they don't have to be tech savvy. There are 4 more other categories they could choose from. But I picked the website category because it was the perfect way for me to display information and also photos, images, video, and audio. I also love computers and work with coding a lot, so it was natural for me to have that kind of medium to display my information.
It's interesting. I'm sure there are a lot of people in the United States who don't understand gerrymandering and don't understand the importance of voting, the congressional elections. I happened to have been in Germany last year during the election, and they weren't paying any attention to the House and Senate or the local governments either, which control the districts the way they're. And I explained it to them, and they said, "Oh, that's so interesting. Never heard of that before." I think a lot of people in the United States aren't aware of it either. Rebecca, I wanted to ask you, is your website still available? Can people still see it?
It is still available, yes. It's also on the National Archives website. Currently, they were the sponsors of the Constitution Award.
Do you know the address?
It's a long string of numbers that the NHD judges gave to me, but I'm sure we can photo impose it.
Well, we'll see if we can get to that. In any case, people could try and search
Sure.
for it.
Yeah, and we can maybe get it on the the Connecticut History Day website
That would be
too.
good. That's probably easier to find. So Rebecca, that was Josh's project. Tell me a little bit about some of the other winning projects this year in Connecticut.
Well, this year at the national contest, we really had an amazing experience. And, we're a small state with about 4,000 students who participate, and yet our name kept being called at the awards ceremony, and it was really kind of very exciting. But there's always a wide range of projects that students explore, and that's really, I think, the fun of History Day. We call it student choice, student voice, because students actually get to choose what they study. And when we meet with students and they say, "Oh, I don't like history," and we start quizzing them. Well, do you like fashion? There's always something to find. Some of the projects that come to mind at the national contest, we had a student who did a project on eugenics. Another student, Lindsay, who won a scholarship to the University of Maryland, did her project on Dolly Madison. Trying to think of some of the other really outstanding ones that we saw. Another student won first place in senior individual exhibits, and she did her project on ACT UP and the response to the AIDS crisis of the 1980s. We had two students win in the senior papers, and one did it on Malengua, might be mispronouncing that island in Maine, and another did it on, and Shea Bono, I believe is his name, but it was a really important case in India about the tension between religious law and secular law in India. So, and then we always have students who do a lot of Connecticut topics, which we really try to encourage because we're fortunate to live in a state with so many great resources. We had, based on last year's theme, quite a few Hartford Circus Fire projects, but all kinds of projects that were exploring Connecticut's history. But it's a really wide gamut. And the reason why it is so broad, and basically what students have to do is tie their project into this theme, so it can be anything from local to international, and that's really to make the program flexible to work with all kinds of social studies classes, but then also to give students flexibility and to really explore what they have a passion for.
So, Josh, you saw the projects, I guess, at nationals more than you did at locals, or you also have a state.
We do have a state contest, yes.
So describe some of the, so not everything is a website, not everything is a paper. There are videos, there are performances. Could you describe a few that particularly impressed you?
Sure. So the experience at nationals is one that is hard to forget. They have an entire hall that they call the exhibit hall dedicated to the exhibit category. And you walk in and there are these huge spaces where you have towers of projects and poster board, and you're walking through these aisles and history is just leaking off the walls. It's really, and you have the groups and the students there that made those projects, and they're there to talk to you and hand you papers and more information about their projects. You can also go next door and sit in on a documentary or a judging session for a performance and watch those live on stage. It's really unique because you see all of these kids flourishing not only in the study of history, but in their passion. Like Ms. Taber-Conover said, you have kids doing what they love, and myself included.
And I guess creativity. The area that I judged in was video, and I was not super impressed by the videos that I saw, but none of them were first place winners. But it involves writing like a play. The people who perform things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, they have to write their own script. And you know, one of the things I really love about the History Day process is that, and it depends kind of when in the contest season runs all March. So sometimes earlier in March, projects might not be as finished. But students are encouraged to take their judging forms and their judging sheets, and they're encouraged to not only take them, but if they're going on to the next level, they're encouraged to make changes. Mm-hmm. So sometimes for students, going to the regional contest is one of the first times adults have seen their projects, and so they can take that feedback and use it to keep making improvements.
So one of the things I want to ask you is that I'm interviewing you because you both live in Simsbury, and I was curious, did you know each other before, or before this?
Before History? I don't think so. I met Miss Taber-Conover when she came to do do a talk in my classroom where I worked with my mentor the first year I did History Day. And I remember that world civilizations teacher saying, hey, Josh, I think there's this Miss Taber-Conover. She's the one that will coordinates the Connecticut competition. Maybe we could have her come in and do a workshop. And that's how I think we were introduced, yeah.
Yeah. And you didn't know that she was from Simsbury?
At the time, no, I didn't. It's pretty crazy that.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, when I noticed, I read something about you in the press somewhere and noticed that you were from Simsbury, and because I've known Rebecca for quite some time, I also knew that she was from Simsbury, and I thought, oh, that's a good show. So that's how I put the two of you together here.
Yeah.
So to go off a little bit off topic, you just came back from an interesting summer in France, and I'd like you to tell us a little bit about what you were doing and how that came about.
Sure. So I just got back a few weeks ago from Simsbury, France. It's in the Lorraine province in Meurthe-et-Moselle, and it's an area of communes along the German border where Connecticut men from who fought in World War I were sent to fight in trenches against the impending German army. And I was able to work there, and we restored trenches for the month of July that these Connecticut soldiers fought in. It was a team of 15 Connecticut students, myself being one of them, and we worked with 15 French students from the surrounding communes there as well. And it was amazing. I, for the first time in my life, was standing in. I was surrounded by living history. Again, these were Connecticut men. These were men that I've handled the coats of at the Simsbury Historical Society where I work. Men that we went and visited the Samuel American Military Cemetery, where a lot of these men were buried, close by to the trenches, and I got to sit next to the graves of the soldiers I had researched back here in Simsbury. It was a wonderful experience. We dug for about 2 weeks of active digging time, and we did the rest to travel around the area and learn about the soldiers. And we found artifacts. We found a lot of, I think what was one of the coolest things, we found the eating tins and even an American boot from preserved underground from 1917, 1918.
So I'm curious, when you said you worked on digging out the trenches, so the trenches that had been dug during the First World War had been filled in on purpose or by accident, or?
So, of course, the Battle of Seicheprey, where this happened, was over 100 years ago. A lot of, just natural debris had fallen in the trenches and raised it about 4 or 5 feet from where the original level was, where they were walking. As well as at the end of the war, what a lot of French and American soldiers would do is they'd use the trenches as dumping pits for spare barbed wire and stuff. So we would dig up huge piles of things that were never used, but were just cast in there before they went home. And so when we got there, it looked like a normal forest. Of course, 100 years ago, that forest was not there. It was, you could see everything for miles. Right. If you're comparing the pictures. And we cleared rocks, we cleared debris, fallen trees, and tried to recreate what our soldiers would have lived in for the many months they were there.
Do you study French?
I do, and that was quite the advantage there. I was one of 2 French-speaking American students who were taking French in high school, and we were able to communicate better than I expected with the French kids. They're our same age, and they're, yeah. There's
nothing like being in a language to be able to pick it up,
That's right.
and having a little bit of advantage of knowing the grammar and having read. Right, great. It sounds fabulous.
It was a wonderful experience.
So was there? How did you get this? How were these 15 students selected?
Right. So back in January, I heard through my school's French department, actually, hey, there's this Connecticut State Library is doing this thing where they came to me directly because they knew that I was really interested in history and stuff, and they said, hey, I think this might be a really good opportunity. And I went home and I looked it up, and I emailed Christine Pitsley, who's the coordinator at the Connecticut State Library for the World War I Centennial Commission, and she sent me the application. I had to write a few essays about some primary sources that I analyzed from the battle, and I heard back in, I'd say, 2 to 3 weeks, and we all met up a few times before we went, all 15 of us, and learned about our soldiers that we were researching and did some work together.
Sounds like a fascinating experience. So, Rebecca, to a couple of personal questions about you. How did you get interested in history?
Well, I actually got interested in history many years ago when the Prince of Wales married Lady Diana Spencer, and I got really into British royalty. And that interest led me to wanting to learn more about royalty before the 1980s, and it really kind of has led into a lifelong love of history. And then when I went to college, I knew I wanted to be a history major. I was very determined on that. And the school I went to, Mary Washington College, now University of Mary Washington, had a historic preservation department, and the very first class in that, the 101 class was a general ed class. And I took it, and it was an architectural history class, and I was totally hooked. And I still remember sitting in one of my museum studies, because historic preservation is a combination of architecture, archaeology, and museum work. And I remember taking the museum class, sitting there, and someone from Kenmore, their educator, was talking, and I remember sitting there very clearly thinking, that's what I want to do. And here I am all these many years later, fortunate enough to be doing that.
So before the old State House, where you do Connecticut History Day and programs, what did you do before that?
Yes, so I've worked at a number of institutions on the East Coast. I started my career at Historic Charleston Foundation. In Charleston, I worked for the Maryland Historical Society. And before I came to Connecticut's Old State House, I spent about 7 years as the Director of Education for Connecticut Landmarks, which is a Connecticut institution that runs 5 historic house museums across the state.
Interesting. So we have just a few minutes left, and I want you to talk a little bit about judging. You always need judges for the Connecticut thing. What do you, what are you looking for? What skills do judges need to have, and what are their responsibilities?
Absolutely. Well, as you well know from kindly volunteering for us, we do always need judges. And at the regional contest and state contest, we assemble teams of 2 to 3 volunteer judges to review student projects. They get to meet students, they get to look at their projects, provide written feedback, and also choose the top placement and the winners who will go on to the next level of competition. And really what we're looking for judges, sometimes people approach me and they say, well, I wasn't a history major, I didn't work in history. And you don't have to be a history major. What you need to be a judge is, I think, have an affinity for young people, because we do have students as young as 6th grade creating a project. You've got to be able to interact with students in a way that provides constructive criticism in a kind and gentle way. But then people who have a background, let's say in your case where you worked in the media field, that you were a great judge for documentaries, and so having those specific skills is helpful. And to judge, you can go to our website, which is www.historydayct.org, and we provide breakfast and lunch for our judges. It is usually a full day starting about 7:45 or 8 and ends about 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
It's actually a lot of fun, but I've just gotten the word that we're done here, and this has been a lot of fun too. I want to thank Rebecca and Josh so much for coming. It's been really interesting. Thanks to the staff and the volunteers here at SCTV for their help in getting the show on the air. And finally, thank you for joining us. If you missed any portion of the show, you can find it on our website at simsburytv.org. You can also watch it on Comcast channel 1084, as well as on Channel 5, and on Frontier on Channel 6069. See you next time.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.